Most everyone has some knowledge about Noah and the flood. Many view the flood during Noah's time as a global event. All mankind and land animals were killed on the earth except for those the ark. Others see the flood as a local flood and little beyond that. Both positions raise questions like the following. The amount of water needed to flood the tops of all the mountains of the world would require over double the amount of the water as found on the earth. Where did all that water come from and where did it go? Some suggest that before the flood, the world was mostly flat with just small hills. There is no scientific or scriptural evidence for this. In fact, Genesis 7:19 suggests that there were high hills on the earth prior to the flood. The argument that the world was mostly flat is false. How did all the millions of animal species that lived on the earth fit into the ark? How did they all return to their natural habitats after the flood? For example, how did the koala bear and anaconda get from Australia and Brazil to where the ark was? Then how did they get from Mount Ararat back to Australia and Brazil? The flood is said to have occurred between 2000 and 2500 BC. 8 people lived through the flood. The story of the Tower of Babel in Genesis chapter 11 occurs between 100 and 350 years after the flood. The story implies a large number of people being alive on the earth to be scattered. Historical evidence shows many ancient civilizations flourished between 1500 and 2500 BC, whether in Egypt, India, Asia, and the Americas. It is hard to see how 8 people could have repopulated the earth that quickly for all of this to have occurred. These questions are hard to answer if the flood was indeed global. In regards to the flood being local, there is one issue that is hard for me to get past. Why? Why go through the trouble of building an ark and putting animals on it when the lives of the animals and Noah's family could be saved by taking a long walk? Maybe the story is somewhere between the two views. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints teaches that Noah was a real person, he built an ark, and a flood as described in Genesis chapter 7 occurred. As to the finer details, members can figure them out for themselves. The following is what I have been able to discover for myself and present them here for others to consider. The word heaven is the Hebrew, shemayim, and means, heaven, heavens, sky. It only has to refer to the sky that Noah could visually see. The word earth comes from the Hebrew, eretz, and can mean a lot of things from the whole earth to land like a country or territory, to something simple as ground and soil. While it is possible it is referring to the entire planet, it is more likely to be referencing something limited in scope. Genesis 7:20 says, 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. 15 cubits is about 23 feet. The word, mountain, is from the Hebrew, har, and means, hill, mountain, hill country, mount. What is called mountains may be nothing more than hills. It is possible that the area that Noah lived had small hills and when covered by water, Noah could not see dry land. The text does not imply that high mountains 2,000 miles away from Noah were underwater. How would Noah know that they were covered? The scriptures have many examples using phrases like, the whole world, but these examples should not be interpreted to mean the entire planet. There is no evidence that the authors of the Bible had a good understanding of the entire planet. For the people in those days, the world was the known world they were familiar with. These examples should be understood with that mindset. For example, Deuteronomy 2:25 uses the phrase, under the whole heaven. This exact phrase is used in Genesis 7:19. Deuteronomy 2:25 is not suggesting the entire planet would fear and tremble before Moses. Exodus 10:14-15 says the locusts covered the face of the whole earth. Should we take this to mean they covered the entire planet including the oceans? 1 Kings 10:24 says all the earth sought to hear Solomon and his wisdom. Is there evidence that anyone in the Americas or Asia sought his wisdom? The New Testament writers also followed this line of thinking. Luke 2:1 says Caesar taxed all the world. Did he really attempt to tax the Chinese or the Mayans? Acts 19:27 says the whole world worshipped Diana. Did the Chinese and Mayans know about let alone worship Diana? Romans 1:8 says the faith was spoken throughout the whole world. Did those in China or Japan know about the faith at that time? Here are some other examples. These expressions are not to be taken literally that the whole planet was referenced. Why apply it differently to Noah and the flood? What possibly caused the flood? Nobody knows for certain, so the following is speculation. On theory could be that asteroids may have hit the Earth including the ocean causing giant tsunamis and created large amounts of water vapor in the atmosphere. This could have been a major source of the rain that fell. Perhaps it is possible that the entire globe was affected in some way. Depending on the size and number of the hits, it could have rained over the whole Earth without destroying all life and submerging mountains under thousands of feet of water. Is evidence to suggest asteroids could have done this? Two recent meteorite impact discoveries from different parts of the world around the same period of the Noah flood makes this plausible. One was in Argentina with one of the largest meteorites ever found. The article, "A Giant Meteorite Has Just Been Unearthed in Argentina," by Beck Crew from 2016 discusses the issue. The important part of the article relevant to the discussion here states: the discovery, made on the border of Chaco, about 1,078 kilometers, 670 miles, northwest of the Buenos Aires. Thought to have been impacted by a powerful meteor shower between 4,200 and 4,700 years ago. A second impact in Iraq is written about in the article, Comets, Meteors and Myth, New Evidence for Toppled Civilizations and Biblical Tales. Here a possible 2-mile-wide crater was found in Iraq by satellite images. The findings are preliminary but a possible candidate for the cause of global disruption that occurred in the 2000 to 2500 BC time frame. The article states, the Epic of Gilgamesh describes the fire, brimstone and flood of possibly mythical events. Omens predicting the Akkadian collapse preserve a record that many stars were falling from the sky. The Curse of Akkad, dated to about 2200 BC, speaks of flaming potsherds raining from the sky. Roughly 2,000 years later, the Jewish astronomer Rabbi Bar Nachmani created what could be considered the first impact theory, that Noah's flood was triggered by two stars that fell from the sky. When God decided to bring about the flood, he took two stars from Kema, threw them on earth, and brought about the flood. The article speaks of a comet called Enka, said to have been a part of a larger comet that broke apart about 5,000 years ago. The theory is fragments hit the Earth and these impacts could be the cause of global climate cooling found in tree rings from 2354 to 2345 BC. Impacts could also create tsunamis hundreds of feet high. It references of two craters in Argentina that are believed to have been created in the past 5,000 years. One of them is probably the one discussed previously in this presentation. Since the Earth is mostly water, for every impact on land, at least two impacts on the Earth would hit the oceans. Since impacts on the Earth are rare in terms of human history, it would seem likely that the impacts in Argentina and Iraq are part of the same event. Perhaps multiple impacts in the Atlantic Ocean would create tsunamis and rain clouds that are the cause of the Great Flood. Based on this and certain Latter-day Saint views, my proposed model of the Noah flood is as follows. Noah lived in the Americas before the flood. According to this secondary source, it claims Joseph Smith said Noah lived near the Atlantic coast in the Carolinas. I don't know if this is correct, but I will go with that for now. The Earth was hit by multiple meteoroids. They hit the Atlantic Ocean, causing tsunamis and sending large amounts of heated water vapor in the atmosphere. This caused large storms and rain over a large portion of the Earth. This is the cause of the flood that wiped out the civilization Noah was living in. Over the course of 4 to 5 months, the Ark moved to the Middle East. They named new landmarks and places they encountered with established names from their former civilization, which is not unusual for travelers to do. For example, they encountered a new river and rather giving it a new name, they called it the Euphrates. The pre-flood Euphrates is a different river than the post-flood Euphrates which is found in the Middle East today. The rest is history. Maybe I am wrong, but the current evidence as I see it makes this entirely possible. Thank you for your time.